Right.
And still we're just watching, you know. And when we walked outside, that's when the dust cloud was already down on everything.
So what do you see? Just black?
It just, no, it wasn't
Gray?
black. It was like this volcanic ash, but it was everywhere. It was like thick in the air. And we were running through it. We didn't even know what it was. But everybody else watched those towers collapse live on TV. We probably didn't find out until an hour later. Somebody said the towers collapsed. We're like, what? We actually got sent to a different firehouse. We got sent to 2 or 3 of them to cover. And by this time, you know, anybody who was off duty had been reporting in to their firehouse. And these guys are sitting there, and their rigs are gone. Sorry.
Right. And they're, right. Their friends
And they're
are
wondering
gone.
if all their friends are dead. And we're sitting there with them. Like, we weren't as close to these guys, but, you know, the Brotherhood of Firemen, we were sitting there. It was very tough. So I remember when I finally got in my car to drive home, and I'm driving home by myself, and I'd always driven listening to the radio, music, whatever. That had to be off. I needed silence. And I remember just racing to get home. Seems all bets are off. Didn't even care about that, and that's when everything started flooding in on me. You know, the magnitude of what had just happened.
And are you thinking in the back of your head, you're looking up to the sky and just wondering, is there a larger presence here?
After a while, that's what I came to. Initially, there's a lot of sorrow, a lot of anger.
And who are you angry at?
Angry at the terrorists who flew the planes into the towers. Angry at the world.
Angry at the world.
Why does this have to happen?
How many funerals did you go to?
Well, 343 of our brothers were lost in that event. And I'm sure each one of them got a line of duty funeral, which is a very important thing in the fire department. I remember, you know, after a couple of years, a couple of guys got killed at a fire, and going to that, and it moved me very much. It solidified the brotherhood.
Right.
But this was too much, you know. It's like, I mean, everybody dealt with it differently. I'm sure there are guys that went to every one of those funerals. I think I went to about 10 or so, and I just couldn't do it anymore.
Right.
But my heart was always there with them. You know, some people didn't understand that, but you know, I had to do what was going to work for me at that point.
You still had to try to keep some sort of sanity going. Right. So, ultimately, you know, days, months passed, and are you trying to make sense of it? Are you looking for something, like I said, an omnipresence, a God?
Absolutely. After the initial anger or whatever, but yeah, it came to that. You wonder why. You start questioning. You want to make sense of something you can't make sense out of.
So what do you start to do?
Well, I don't know. I was drawn to reading books about spirituality.
Was this because of this, or did you have any interest in it prior to this?
I think it was mostly because of this. There was a time before I sort of had an interest. It's hard to describe. It was like a short time before 9/11. They call it midlife crisis, whatever you want to call it. I was beginning to question on a smaller level these things. So I had begun to like investigate it.
And then you got
books, and then
catapulted.
And I got catapulted. That's a good word. You know, I'd like to quote a guy I identify with a lot, Eckhart Tolle. He wrote a bunch of books, Power Now, Stillness Speaks. And one of the things he said that I was just remembering the other day is contained in every disaster is the seed of grace. And I finally came around to looking for that seed of grace in this disaster. And lo and behold, it's there. It's hard to find, but it's there.
Yeah.
And doesn't say this was a good thing that happened or anything like that, but how long can I carry my anger, my sadness? So there are ways to release it.
What helped you work through that?
Well, good friends.
Good friends.
I was drawn to this yoga class for some reason.
And
met a very spiritual man who's become a good friend of mine,
And who's that?
That's Arthur Mitchell.
Arthur Mitchell. So you took a yoga class with Arthur Mitchell, and what was your impression of this yoga instructor?
Well, I had taken yoga classes before, but they were very physical, if you will.
Okay.
And I kind of didn't identify with them.
Mm-hmm.
But Arthur's class had a spiritual angle to it, if you will. Something there, as the chicken crows outside. Yeah, and I just kept going and wanted more. And he always stressed meditation, and I didn't come around to it, right away.
Mm-hmm.
But I have,
And through going to this class, you've met different people?
Yeah, sure.
New friends?
Yeah, new friends, different people.
Who helped you? How?
Just by being open.
Mm-hmm.
The more I get to know people better, like as I got to become a friend of Arthur's, he shared with me tragedies from his life.
Mm-hmm.
And how that set him on the spiritual path, if you will. And it happened to him at a much younger age. And when I started to hear these things, I started to realize, it's not just me. It's like this happens to everybody in some way, shape, or form. So I'd like to stress that, yeah, I was a fireman and I had an experience with 9/11. It doesn't make me any better or any worse than anybody else. But I do feel that I was just closer to it than most people.
Right.
And I have a desire to maybe share what I've learned, that's all.
And possibly help others.
Possibly help others, yeah.
It's nice to see that the glass is half full and not half empty.
Yeah. Well, it's kind of a theme of this show we've been working on. When you change the way you look at things, the things you look at change.
Right, and it's true for you.
It's been true for me. But I have to remember every day, too, to stay open to that.
There's this picture that you had taken. You're gonna have to...
Spilled weird. This way?
Oh.
Oh.
I'm gonna turn around, just read that saying that you had put onto it.
It says that this is a picture I took with one of those throwaway pocket cameras a day or two after the event. I don't know, I just took it out and clicked it. I don't even know why. But there it is, and I just wrote under it because it moved me. It said, life is challenging. Suffering is optional. All joys and all sorrows shall pass. Keep walking, there's no place to go. That's a line from a Rumi poem. So it just became a reminder to me.
Right. That life still goes on.
Life still goes on, And, those are true words.
Yeah.
It's like when I get caught up in myself or start feeling depressed or whatever, just try to remember them.
Yeah. Well, and you're certainly moving on.
And I was just thinking of this morning, because, I took this picture, I got it enlarged, and I put it on my wall, and I took it off my wall, and I put it on my wall, and I put it back up. I'm like, why am I looking at this? It's a picture of death and destruction. And it kind of came to me this morning. It's kind of funny how that happens.
Synchronistic again.
Synchronistic, but, I'm just realizing, because I read Eckhart Tolle again. He was talking about, Jesus and the cross. How the cross has become a symbol of hope and faith and goodness. In reality, it was an instrument of torture and death.
Right.
And I, not at the same level, but I was kind of looking at this picture that way.